Hi, and welcome to Inside Creative Lives. I'm your host, Alice Kiro, and I'm delighted to introduce you to painter Amy Dixon today. Amy has a devoted number of collectors all around the world who wait with bated breath to see her next collection, because you never know what Amy's going to do next. She's never complacent. She never rests upon her many laurels. She just keeps pushing herself creatively and inspiring us all along the way. I can't wait for you to see Amy Dixon's work.
Hi, my name's Amy. Welcome to my studio. My name is Amy Dixon. I'm an artist here in Edmonton. I'm a painter, mostly in acrylics. What I'm best known for is landscape painting. I love exploring themes around home, like what home looks like for me, what home looks like for others, what landscapes I feel most at home in. I like working in a really large scale, so like the bigger, the better when it comes to my canvas size. I love using bold colors. Like a lot of my work is based on not really what you see in reality, but my reflections on reality or like my memories of that place. So I loosely use a reference photo, but then also use a lot of bold colors to kind of represent my subject. And I love using lots of texture. Some of my earliest creative memories are just like painting and drawing all the time. That's all I did as a kid. I asked my mom what her earliest memory was of me painting or drawing, and she said she couldn't even remember because it was just like such a constant thing that it wasn't even special because that's all I did. At one point in my life, I wanted to be a fashion designer. Didn't quite get there, but I would fill just like sketchbooks and sketchbooks and sketchbooks of fashion designs, like all of these ladies in really extravagant wedding dresses and gowns and like cool outfits. My partner calls me like a bit of like a hobby jumper. I've gone through all kinds of different phases. I've gone through like a weaving phase, a punch needle phase, a sewing phase, leather marbling phase, figure skating. Like literally, I love it all. But the other creative interest that I have that has really stuck over the past couple of years is pottery. So I love ceramics, specifically wheel thrown pottery. It's been like such a beautiful thing to add to my arsenal of like creative exploration. And so if I'm not in my studio painting, I'm probably full of mud head to toe in the pottery studio. I thought I wanted to be a journalist when I graduated. So I did an undergrad in political science, history, and human rights. By the end of my degree, I didn't think I wanted to be a journalist anymore. I didn't know what I wanted to be. And then years afterwards, like probably a decade or so afterwards, I went back to school for my MBA in community economic development. I was working in kind of like the realm of community development, nonprofit, stuff like that. The transition between that and becoming a full-time artist was interesting. It's an interesting one. So I started painting again in a more intentional way when I was actually doing my MBA. And I was so stressed out, like I couldn't sleep at night. And so I started painting again in the evening as a way again to like calm my busy brain. I forgot how much I really loved doing this. So just for fun, I started doing a couple of local art walks. And that was really fun to get real-time feedback from people. And it was way more positive than I ever expected. I was like, who wants to look at my weird paintings? But it turned out lots of people wanted to look at my weird paintings, so that was really encouraging. And then I found myself at a bit of a turning point where I was like, okay, like I really like my job and I do like my career, but I really love painting. And then back in, I think it was 2017, my partner and I decided to do something a little bit crazy. We basically sold all of our things and moved to Europe for the year. And that was really like the turning point where I was like, okay, if I want to do this, I can't keep my 9-to-5 job and I won't be able to come back to it in the same way. So I quit my job and we moved to Europe. We spent the year like traveling and exploring. And that was really a time for me to hone in on what this art career could look like, what I wanted to paint, what was important to me, kind of developing new habits and skills. So when I came back from that trip, that's really when I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a real go. And if it all goes to heck, I'll fall back on my previous career. But thankfully I haven't had to do that. And I've been painting full-time ever since. So this is my studio. It's not a huge space, but we get a lot done. So over here is my couch, which is really important because sometimes you just need to take a break. And I like to stare at my paintings from a distance. So I will often just like sit here and stare and walk back and forth while I paint. Over here is where I keep a lot of art supplies that I don't use all the time. They're kind of like once in a while supplies. So I have weird things like these 3D liners. Feels like you're painting with puffy paint, which makes me feel like I'm 10 and I really enjoy. My brushes, some paints, varnishes. Over here is where I keep most of the paint that I use on a daily basis. These are pre-mixed paints that I keep for projects that I'm working on. Of course, we have my coffee machine, which is very, very important. These are my collection of studio mugs, which are mugs that I made for other people that didn't quite turn out. So they're seconds and I get to use them now. For my coffee, one of the plants I haven't killed yet. This is my printer. I print all of my prints on canvas. So you kind of see here, the canvas roll comes through here and I can print really big, beautiful prints that basically look like they could be original paintings. This is an example of one of them that hasn't been trimmed yet. So you can kind of see here. We ship everything out from this little area. And then over here is where I do most of my painting. So this is my work table. It's small right now and there's nothing on it, but usually it's full of paint. This is my easel, which I really like. More plants I haven't killed yet. And that's it. My previous experience working in like marketing and communications and kind of more in the corporate world really helped my art business in the sense that it provided some rigor. Like I had some experience in project planning, event planning, thinking through campaigns. And so when I was trying to think through how to share my work with the world through the internet, I adopted that approach. I organized my year in different collection releases. So I'll paint a certain number of paintings and I'll release them on a certain day. And that really underpins my entire year and how I plan everything. And that's how I plan my finances. That's how I plan my painting schedule. That's how I plan like vacations. I am not naturally a super organized person that in order to communicate what I do in an effective way to make sure that people know what I'm doing is I make really intense work back schedules where I list absolutely everything I need to do, dates attached to everything, when I need to photograph everything, when I need to have things done. I feel like my business is like, it's partially painting and I feel like it's partially just like communications, like making beautiful newsletters to make sure that people know what I'm doing, writing interesting narratives to like give people a peek into like my process and my inspiration. So because so much of my work is behind a computer screen, I'm just always thinking about how can I bring this to life for people in an interesting way. I grew up in a little tiny place called Shetty Camp on the west coast of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. It's in the middle of nowhere and it's absolutely beautiful. It's like the gateway to the Cabot Trail. So it's gorgeous. My dad was a fisherman growing up, a lobster fisherman. We spent tons of time outside because that was literally the only thing to do. That simplicity and that simple kind of life has definitely stuck with me. So I haven't lived there in a really long time, but I always find myself looking for that feeling in other places, which is why I talk about how I'm always looking for home in my work. It's important that I have a separate workspace from home. First of all, because like I'm super messy. I mean, you can tell from my studio, I like to feel free to throw paint around and not worry about like ruining the carpet. I also can be a bit of a workaholic. Like I get super hyper focused on something, and if it's immediately available to me, I just won't stop. So having a separate studio forces me to like go home and stop painting. And it's also been really nice to have a separate space when folks want to come in and take a look at paintings, that I'm not inviting them into my house, which can feel like a little bit awkward. I'm inviting them into a separate studio space, and I feel like it just feels like a bit more comfortable for everyone. Plein air painting is like a practice that goes back to the Impressionists, which is all about getting outside and painting on location in nature. The way I approach it is just like getting an impression of the landscape in that moment in time. And it plays a big role in my practice because I love, what I do most is landscape painting, but there's really nothing like being in a landscape and really taking the time to like look at all of the details, take in all the color, whether or not the painting you're working on is successful, which oftentimes it isn't. The process of like looking deeply at your surroundings is just so meaningful and so valuable. So when I go back to my studio and I start working on a bigger painting, it might not be exactly like that smaller study, but in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking about like how I felt in that moment. What were the things that stood out to me in that moment? What colors really kind of like punctuated that landscape, and then that's what I can bring to like my final work. If I'm feeling really overwhelmed or if I'm in a rut, it can be as simple as like just a change of environment, because even though I'm going on a walk, I'm still thinking about all the stuff I have to do. Is I like to take photos. Like I like to look for like interesting color combinations. I like to look for just like little details on my walk, and I take photos of them. And that process of like engaging my brain in doing something on my walk helps shut out the rest of it and like really chill me out. Chill me out. I think as a creative, mental health is always top of mind because it's so vulnerable to be creative and to like put your work out into the world. And I think, like honestly, every time I release a collection, like, I've been doing this for a long time at this point, and you would think I would get over it, but I haven't. I feel so much pressure. I feel so much anxiety, and it's something that I deal with all the time because it's like there's Amy, the person, me, there's Amy, the business. One would think that they would feel separate, but they feel very intertwined because my paintings are a reflection of my inner self. My work gets a weird reaction. It makes me feel like it's like a personal failing. When I feel that coming on, I also like reflect back on like past experiences, and I'm like, well, I got through it that time. I'll get through it this time. Feels like a lot of time the world is literally and figuratively on fire. And, I often think like, will I be able to paint these beautiful landscapes in the future with the way that the world is heading? So I'm always thinking, how can I help support these beautiful communities and these beautiful environments? When the wildfires happened in Jasper, which was super devastating for that community, Jasper is a place that I take a lot of inspiration from, that I've painted tons of scenes from. And there's one painting in particular, Pyramid Mountain, that I thought might be appropriate in that instance. So we like quickly put together a fundraiser, and it's one of those things. Sometimes it takes off, sometimes it hits, sometimes it doesn't. But this one really hit a chord with people because, the folks in my community also really care about Jasper. So it was like a bit of a perfect pairing. We raised just over $36,000 in just like 4 or 5 days for the Jasper Wildfire Relief Fund. Friends, holy moly, we have raised over $20,000 in less than 24 hours through the sale of my Pyramid Mountain art prints for the Red Cross, the Wildfires Appeal, in support of Jasper. That is wild. And when that was matched with like provincial and federal dollars, we were able to make a donation, or altogether the donation was for just under $110,000 for the Red Cross, which was absolutely incredible. Felt so special to be able to like use my art in that way. Autonomy is really important to me. I think as a creative, it's easy to get bogged down into what you think you should be doing, or maybe what like other people are doing, or what someone told you you should do. But ultimately, I think in order to preserve like that magic that happens around like art and creativity, you really have to be mindful of filling your day with things that like fill your cup, because that's so special. And it's so easy to dwindle that down with a bunch of stuff that you really hate doing, but you feel like you should be doing. I really need to feel like I have freedom to make choices and to change things if I want to change them, and to be in control of my own time. And so I make decisions based on that. Like, is this stealing my freedom or is it giving me freedom? One thing I think all creatives could benefit from is just like really leaning into like yourself, listening to your gut and to your own instincts. And I think sometimes just rejecting the noise. Intrinsically, like we know what is best for our practice and we know what is best for our business. And I think we all are more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. Sometimes I think it's just considering what you think is best for your business and trusting yourself and having the confidence to follow your gut.